Shana Tova, everyone. It was October 9th, 2023. My phone rang and it was a wedding couple getting married the following weekend. Now, they were self-described as older, having searched for most of their 20s and 30s to find each other, looking for their besheret before they finally found each other. Then, after getting engaged, the pandemic hit. One of them was an ER doctor in New York and actually moved out of their apartment for fear of bringing the disease home. But a year later, they finally booked their dream day, October 14th. It was a date decades in the making. But now it was October 9th, and they felt conflicted. How could they celebrate their long-awaited day of love when Hamas had just murdered 1,200 Israelis, the hostages, the chaos, the most deadly day in Jewish history since the Holocaust? Now, as part of their celebration, this particular couple had planned an especially elaborate hora, and I'm not making any of this up. They had sent an instructional video to their guests. They had hired professional dancers, and they had worked with their band to plan the perfect playlist. Should we tone it down, they asked? Maybe no hora? We've had a lot of conversations like this over the past 2 years, and we figured out how to keep living despite the onslaught of anti-Semitism, the hostages still in Gaza, the war with Hamas, the American political landscape, but it hasn't been easy. The more pain and violence we see, the harder it is to feel joy. The book of Deuteronomy, from which we read this morning, is our people's oldest template for joy. Moses, in his final speech to the Israelites before they enter into the land of Israel, describes a dozen ways to celebrate, to experience joy, to feel simcha. These include the harvesting of the first fruits grown in the land of Israel. It includes a newlywed couple spending an entire year home together, their first year of marriage. And finally, having our own permanent place to bring sacrifices to God. But the most extraordinary is God's warning that curses are not going to come upon the people of Israel because we serve idols, but because we did not serve God with joy and gladness. The absence of joy is the first sign that a community is in trouble. But joy isn't just a light switch we can turn on whenever we want. I remember my first Purim, only a few months after we lost our baby Leo. Walking around that carnival, seeing the children dressed up and the music, it was nearly more than I could take. I may not have been wearing a costume, but I sure was wearing the mask of someone who was doing okay, even though that was the farthest thing from the truth. But I was doing my best to smile, to greet everyone, when a couple that I didn't know very well came up to me. Right over there in the chapel, I can see the spot. As the children ran around with their bags of popcorn and cotton candy, this couple told me their story. 10 years before, they had lost their first pregnancy, also in the third trimester. Their world was also shattered. In the middle of the happiest Jewish holiday, the three of us stood over there and we all cried. We hugged. I felt so seen. They promised me that one day I would feel a joy that wasn't only overwhelmed by grief. And when the conversation ended, they disappeared out into the chaos of the carnival, chasing after their living children. And I saw my first glimpse of joy in many, many months. It might sound cliche, but it's only because it's true. Embracing joy is not easy, especially when life is so hard. And it has been. We've become so accustomed to even prefacing our joy with an acknowledgement of pain. I debated talking about joy this year, not because we don't need it, we do, because it can often feel like an unearned privilege or like a luxury that we can live without, but neither is true. Joy is something we are desperate for, and something we've put on the back burner for long enough. So this is the day. This is the day we reclaim our Jewish joy. Now, Yom Kippur, you might be saying to yourself, may feel also like the wrong day to focus on joy. But the rabbis think differently. In a midrash, they imagine what Jewish time will look like one day when the Messiah comes in a messianic, redemptive era. They say that we won't celebrate Passover to remember the Exodus from Egypt because we'll already be free. We won't mark Tisha B'Av because there will be no more calamities befalling the Jewish people. We won't even celebrate Shabbat because every day will be restful. But there are two holidays that for the rest of time the Jewish people will celebrate, even after the coming of the Messiah, and they are Purim and Yom Kippur. Now, these days represent the extremes of the human experience, but both lead us to joy. On Purim, we indulge to excess. On Yom Kippur, we restrict and deny. On Purim, we are commanded to be happy, and on Yom Kippur, that happiness can be found through the inner work of spiritual reflection and tshuva. But the rabbis call today the happiest day of the year. It's why Yom Kippur can be read as Yom HaKippurim, a day like Purim, a day of joy. But to be clear, I'm not really talking about happiness. Though the pursuit of happiness is a human right on which our country was founded, its so-called achievement often leaves us feeling empty. Happy has that saccharine, pediatric quality, which waxes and wanes with life's inevitable highs and lows. And joy is something that can exist in both. Or as Rabbi Jonathan Sachs wrote, joy is not only fun, it's any experience we give our whole being to. Any moment of our life fully inhabited, any feeling fully felt, can be the source of deep joy. I can't say that I'm happy when Eloise is throwing her dinner that I've cooked so nicely for her all over the kitchen. But that couple was right. I am so filled with joy. So step one, never deny yourself joy. The Talmud teaches that when we come to the end of our lives, when we reach the world to come, we will be asked a series of questions about our ethics and our priorities, how we spent our time and our money. But we will be asked to explain each legitimate pleasure that we denied ourselves in this life. You see, when it comes to joy, Judaism doesn't believe in guilty pleasures. Joy is meant to be savored, to enjoy, to share. When someone sponsors the Friday night oneg in honor of their simcha, they're not only just paying for the cookies and rugelach, sorry for all the food talk, but they are inviting their community to share in their personal joy, which creates this wonderful byproduct, communal joy. In her book, The Year of Yes, Shonda Rhimes reflected on her life as she began to find success in her many TV projects. But instead of finding herself eagerly joining into every opportunity, she declined every party, every gathering, every hangout. After years of keeping her nose to the grindstone, she didn't believe she deserved the joy of achievement or celebration. And you don't have to be a famous TV writer to have internalized this message. So when you get the invitation for a party celebrating anything, the milestone birthday, the graduation, the engagement, the reunion, RSVP, which might as well stand for Say Yes to Joy. Now, if you're saying to yourself that you haven't been invited to anything recently, we've already said it a few times, but let me remind you, your own TBJ family is having a gala in just 4 weeks. On October 30th, we're celebrating to honor our educators, but also because we need to have a good time, and you should be there. Remember what Deuteronomy taught. A community's well-being can be measured in joy. When we gather, especially for a simcha, we are showing the health, the strength, and the resilience of a community. This is not a party for party's sake. We are fulfilling our religious obligation to feel every bit of joy we can. So what brings you joy? Live music? Your favorite winning or losing sports teams? Traveling the world? You don't need a rabbinic permission slip, but if you do, here it is. Buy the tickets, sign up, make the plans. Joy is just waiting for us to embrace it. For me, I'm already looking forward to this weekend when I am going to see the Taylor Swift Life of a Showgirl release party in theaters. I could have said I'll be too tired because it is the day after Yom Kippur. But when it comes to joy, Judaism pushes us to get out of our own way. And it's not just the big things. How many of us save the good stuff for a special time that may or may never come? The nice china, the special coat, the family heirlooms. For my entire childhood, my bubby's living room was covered in that thick plastic. You know what I'm talking about. It was probably to prevent my sticky fingers from ruining her nice furniture. But my bubby died, and I never got to sit on the actual cushions of the couch with her. It's like the author Irma Bombeck said, if she were to do things all over again, she would eat popcorn in the china bowl in the good living room and burn that beautiful pink candle that was sculpted into a rose. This isn't about living our life beyond our means or separate from our values. It's about really deeply enjoying the life we have while we have it. Step 2, share Jewish joy. I had to rewrite this paragraph this morning. It was going to say, how many of you saw a photo or read a description of an anti-Semitic event before you came to services today? But we did. I awoke this morning, as maybe you did, to read the horrific news that there was a stabbing, a car stabbing at a synagogue in Manchester, England. Many people injured. From what the last thing I read, 2 of them had died. Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur of all days. I only pray that their community can be comforted, that their families are granted strength, and people just going to pray. somehow their memories can be for blessing. Jew hate is relentless and all-consuming. All of it is constantly running in the background of our hearts and minds, so how are we supposed to feel joy? Well, a few months ago, the AJC hosted a summit for notable Jews from every field, including TBJ's own recent Tonight Show guest, Liz Glazer. The essence of the summit was to educate and empower public-facing Jews to combat anti-Semitism on social media. Too many of us, your clergy included, can't help but to jump right into the internet's black hole of hate, picking apart the arguments of those looking to distort the facts, sharing articles and posts of anti-Semitic events, getting into fights in the comments, and staying up way too late scrolling and working ourselves into a tizzy. But as Liz told me, the summit presented a compelling second option: personal stories of Jewish joy. They urged attendees to flood the internet with authentic expressions of Judaism in its most beautiful forms. Instead of seeing all of the articles, the Jewish Day School with the swastika, the article if Israel is going to be excluded from the Eurovision Song Contest, what instead if we saw pictures of beautifully decorated Shabbat tables, families taking candid photos out by the fountain before services, if we watched the interview of Mayim Bialik explaining the shofar on late-night TV, or read all the articles you want about good Jewish boy Benjamin Levin, a.k.a. Benny Blanco's wedding to Selena Gomez last weekend, where he broke a glass under the chuppah and served challah baked by celebrity Jewish chef Jake Cohen. And next March, the first ever Jewish Comic-Con style conference will be held. Where else but in the Holy Land of Broward County, Florida? A 3-day convention with over 6,000 participants celebrating the best in Jewish pop culture, creativity, and the arts. It's a place for Jews to celebrate being Jewish together. It's sponsored by a new Jewish organization simply called Jewish Joy, LLC. Its founder, the best-selling author Jean Meltzer, she wrote a really sweet Jewish romance book called The Matzah Ball. She realized that after October 7th, the Jewish writers were getting pushed out of traditional literary spaces. So she launched a Facebook group for Jewish writers to talk, and 2 years later, she announced the Jewish Joy Con, part adult youth group, part networking event, part shuk, and part shul. A few years ago, we would have rolled our eyes at the idea of gathering for the sole purpose of finding joy in being Jewish. But now, what could feel more urgent? You know, some of us grew up hiding our Judaism for fear of persecution. Some of us grew up Jewish, but were discouraged from being too Jewish. I was raised in a generation where I thought being Jewish wasn't something that warranted fear or festivity. But we are at a moment in our history. Our story's either going to be written by us or by the people who hate us. So it's time to take joyous action. Jewish customs and culture have survived for generations only because of those who refused to let them be lost. We are now the carriers of this tradition, not only the yellowing fringes of a grandfather's tallis, but the yellow ribbons and the dog tags we still wear. When this chapter in our story is written, it cannot only be about the vigils we cried at, the candles we held in our shaking hands. It has to be about life. The candles we light with the cute little poems at the bar mitzvah parties. The family menorah we schlep on vacation even though we can't light it in the hotel. The Havdalah candles we will hold high in just a few hours to bring this day to a close. Every candle lit to dispel the darkness of our history illuminates the path forward for the next generation. So what are you going to do to show your Jewish joy? Well, if you love to shop, the Jewish retail world is just waiting for you. I'm serious. A new chai, a new Jewish star, a new talit, a piece of art for your home, matching Hanukkah pajamas for your whole family. If you love TV, get ready to watch the new season of Nobody Wants This. Readers, the Jewish literary world has never been more diverse or more spectacular. You know, after Yom Kippur, I'm happy to share some recommendations. If you're traveling abroad, find out if there's a synagogue or a Jewish quarter where you're visiting. And then, like the summit suggested, share these moments of Jewish joy with the internet and social media if you like, with your family or your friends. It's our job to help write the next chapter in our Jewish story. Step 3, stay in the dance. You might be wondering what I said to that couple on October 9th. Should they tone down their horror? No way. I encouraged them to keep their horror exactly as they had imagined it, because it was the most Jewish, most resilient, most joyous thing they could do, especially in the most painful week in Jewish history, at least in our memories. Now, as much as we might assume that the horror is as old as Judaism itself, that it was somehow danced on Mount Sinai, the first Jewish horror was choreographed and performed in 1942 by a Bulgarian, Romanian Jewish dancer. He choreographed it for a Jewish dance troupe that was performing in pre-state Palestine in 1942. The timing is almost unbelievable. The dance, which so many of us have done to celebrate life's happiest moments, was done, was created, was choreographed, was performed the same time that millions of our brethren were being led into the gas chambers. But God knew we were always going to need to dance, and we knew that we would always need joy. So dance we have. The horror was actually popularized by the chalutzim, the pioneers who dug ditches for water by day and danced all night. It was popularized by the young people in the Palmach, who celebrated the creation of the state of Israel on the soles of their feet. Now, in the first horrors, the custom was actually not to hold the hand of the person on each side of you, but to hold on to their shoulders. That way, when the circle of dancers would pick up speed, a person could be lifted clear off the floor. Those who danced in those days recalled that it was almost like being in a trance, a kind of pure, unfiltered, religious joy. So it makes sense that even with their broken hearts and grieving spirits, the tribe of Nova refused to let the Re'im festival be the last time that they danced. Only 9 months after October 7th, 40,000 Israelis flocked to Tel Aviv's Hayarkon Park to come together and reclaim their joy. They could have stayed home and suffered alone in their pain and their grief. And 9 months later, there still was so much of it. So many hostages in Gaza, so many bombs, so much uncertainty. but instead they came together to feel the beat, to hear the music, to be free. One of the dancers there said it was a healing concert. It was quite extreme, she shared. 1 minute, we're doing a guided meditation. I have tears streaming down my face. And then all of a sudden, the DJ comes back on and yells, "We will dance again." The man who shouted the Nova Festival's slogan of resilience, his name is Darwish, and he is a well-known Israeli DJ. Through his tears, he spoke to the crowd about losing his son, Laor, who was DJing at the Nova Festival when Hamas attacked. "You can dance," he said. "You can dance to show your hurt, your pain, your joy, and your love." Despite his own personal loss, he felt a calling to use music to bring a kind of healing trance to the people who needed it the most. Now, it would be pretty absurd if I invited you to get up and dance right now. I won't. But in the days to come, I will. Next week, we begin our autumn holiday of Sukkot, called in the Hebrew Zman Simchatenu, the season of our joy. And the week after, we will dance with the Torah scrolls on Simchat Torah, the joy of our Torah, and we will dance. Don't worry if you have 2 left feet. Bring your whole self, your broken hearts, your grief, your pain, your loss, and bring your joy. Bring the good news you've just been waiting to tell someone. Bring someone in your family, your kids, your grandkids, your siblings, your parents, your friends, a neighbor. And be sure to wear some comfortable shoes, because this isn't going to be the moment to stand around the edge of the circle clapping politely. Rabbi Nachman, the reviver of the Hasidic movement, said that dance was so holy, we should say a prayer before we do it. He wrote, "Dear God, if only my heart would be aligned with you all of the time, I would be filled with joy, and that joy would spread all the way down to my feet and uplift them in dance. Please never let my feet falter. Release them from their heavy bonds and give me the strength to dance, dance, dance." May we in this new year be granted the strength and courage it takes to practice joy. But this is how our people have lived. We put our arms around each other, people we know and people we don't, and we start to dance. One footstep in front of another, round and round we go. The circles of history and pain, the circles of love and simcha, until the energy picks up, trance-like. May we dance every hora we are invited into, holding on to the shoulders of those next to us, lifting them just as they lift us. Shana Tova.